What you are about to watch is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute any type of advice. Always question the validity of what you see and what you hear. Viewer discretion is advised.
So you want to be a more successful tyrant, huh? Don't worry, you've come to the right place. Today in Tyranny 150, I'm going to teach you about the power of real education to regain control and establish a higher level of personal and professional freedom. You may be wondering, why teach you this since this establishes freedom rather than helping you get control over the population? Well, think of it this way. How are you going to counter their freedom if you don't know how they're earning it and establishing it? This lesson won't be as tyranny-driven, but rather freedom-driven. It may come as a shock, but this wouldn't be a complete education if we did not teach you both sides. You see, people get to become tired of living paycheck to paycheck. They get tired of living off minimum wage. They get tired of living with many roommates in small spaces. And they get tired of seeing that their lives, year after year, continue to be the same low quality of progress. This is where learning and acquiring new skills comes into play, and you as a tyrant must allow it. Of course, not without allowing some scams to run freely out there. The reason why you want real, efficient education to exist is because you want people to have the opportunity to better their lives and escape the rat race. If the opportunity exists, people will try and go out of their way to achieve such position. If it doesn't exist, you run the risk of citizens giving up in high masses, and then the labor force will halt. And given that that is the real economy, the currency will devalue and your empire will crumble. This is why you must allow real education to exist. However, you don't want to make it an easy or equitable task. You want to make sure that it is only available for the rich in order to maintain high status for those who already have it. You want it for those smart enough to figure their way around the educational system. You want people to pay to play, either with their money or with their intelligence. An intelligent person who backs your power through their intelligence is as good as a wealthy person who backs you with their resources. We had also established that it was necessary to allow some scams to run. This is particularly important for two reasons. One is that you must allow the scammers to operate so that they can contribute to you in the form of taxes. Plus, some of those scammers are part of your system, which means that they will run indoctrination curricula according to your policy. They will do it because they want to get paid, and the pay is generous, at least for those in the administration and those in the college and university level. The teachers at the lowest levels will get paid next to nothing. They will be okay doing it because they think that they're helping the children. By the time they realize that they're not, they will be too far up in debt and will have no choice but to follow orders, at least for the next 10 years. When we can let some of that made up debt go, and another teacher in debt ready to enlist will come to do your bidding again. The reason why you must allow some other scams to go in is that it keeps the public busy and in chaos. When people are too busy dealing with chaos, they won't have much energy left to look into your doings. Most of the energy will go into trying to get their debt paid or canceled. This will be an added problem for those who are married, and now they can see beyond their problems to notice you're doing, since they are trying to pay their debts and save a marriage that is destined to fail. Another benefit that I almost forgot to mention is that some of the scams that have nothing to do with you are still beneficial to you because they scare people from going into entrepreneurship. Their drive to escape the rat race will drive them to consider finding a way to create an online business so that they can find freedom, which is all too possible. But soon, some scammer will convince them that the way out is through doing Amazon FBA, drop shipping, or some type of crypto scam that will lead to nothing but fruitless investments. After they are out of their money, time, and effort, they will return to the standard labor with their heads down. When people who they share their plans with ask what happened and how that went, they will be replied with silence and remarks that they don't want to talk about it. They will be ashamed of their foolishness and they will be back to square one. But this time, they will trust that your way is the only way and that from now on, they must go by your rules. Work and hope that one day they can retire. You see the benefits of having both an educational system that's to your standards and one that is not to your standards? At some point, people will complain bitterly about some of the obscene scams that become more and more obvious, and at some point, you will have to respond and put your foot up the rear of those tyrants who abuse their chances to shine rather than scam your people. It will remind them that this is a chess game where some tyrant thinks that he is king, but a more powerful tyrant steps in and reminds him that this is his land and he dictates what the rules are and he is not in compliance. Some of these school scamming tyrants will get penalized, others will close down, and in some cases even some lenders will get themselves booted out of the game because they will try to find their own shortcuts to circumvent your game and earn more. This will work for a while. You will notice, you will allow it to play for a bit longer, let people complain about it for a bit, and then go after those sneaky tyrants. I had a friend, a cute ginger with green eyes named Sally. I won't tell you which lender she ran, but it's not hard to decipher. She got real bright until we realized how much she was shining and we had to extinct that glitter. Don't worry, we didn't throw her into a cold cell like we do to those who we're not acquainted with. She was in the club, so we just gave her a slap on the wrist that costed her a few millions and got her to only be able to lend privately going forward. She's not that good of a friend with us anymore. We used to talk once in a while out of obligation, but we all know that in this game there are no real friends. When the public sees schools getting shut down, students who went to those schools getting their loans forgiven, and the lenders who get too obscene with their scams being taken out of the game, the public will trust you, and with that trust comes submission. The key and takeaway here is that people like you are here to have their problems solved and tell them what to do after that. After all, your school system did an excellent job at indoctrinating people into not thinking for themselves. There's a current program in Florida that teaches people how to think for themselves. Besides those in the private schools that only rich people can afford, this is the only program that does that, and efforts are already on the way to ensure the program doesn't make it for long. I think it's just a matter of time and such program will be short-lived. Just like the program that Eastern Gateway Community College was running, where members of the union and their relatives were going to school for free. That was short-lived. They found a way to circumvent the system, but our regulators were on it, and they found a way to shut it down. We reinforced it by finding someone related dirt on the administration, and we managed to instill fear on them, so we know for sure they won't do it again. The news did an excellent job to portray that what they did was evil, so that it was up to us, the good guys, to put our foot up their rear and get them back into compliance. Now they're operating just like any other school has been forced into. There is another program that is being run by the Guild of Education through stores like Walmart, Target, Lowe's, Five Guys, and other places. But this one is well into compliance. What the Guild of Education does is that they find schools willing to partner with them and give generous discounts to any employer that joins the program so that they can pay for their employees' education so that those employees stay with those companies for years, at least until they graduate, which can be a while considering that some of those employers are willing to pay up to a master's degree. The employers resolved the turnover issues that they had before because their employees now have an incentive to stay employed in the form of free recognized education and the school benefits by having students enrolled that otherwise they wouldn't have. This further benefits you because it restores trust in your education system, and it also brings a stronger wave of workers into your labor force, which we already have established in other episodes that the labor force is the real economy. You see, at this point, many people are losing faith in education, especially since we're seeing a huge amount of debt in student loans with people who are no longer willing to pay. Then you have a wave of people who were paying that are now saying, well, these people I know are not paying anymore or got their loans forgiven, so I am not going to pay anymore. This is a problem that can blow on your face if you don't find a real solution. Initially, the idea of having someone work for your agency for 10 years and make 120 payments seemed like an excellent idea because you get 10 years of insured labor from them and some of the money they owed back. But even that now has been deemed to not be sufficient, which places you in all kinds of predicaments. If you remember well from Tyranny 110, the Greek and Roman Empire proven very well that no empire lasts forever. They had an excellent educational system that worked on mathematics, philosophy, architecture, and finance. Eventually, the tyrants got too greedy, and it led to their downfall. If you haven't watched the lesson, I urge you to watch it. It is called Tyranny 110. Ideally, you should be watching this series in order, but if you haven't, don't worry. You will still benefit from listening this one out of order. Now, I hope that your views in the educational system have changed a bit. Families who are rich have known this for too long, so they send their kids to the most prestigious schools that they can afford. They know that the gap between the public education and the private education is astronomical, so they opt for private school every time. If they really thought that there was no difference or the difference was too insignificant, they would not send their kids to private school. Some people think that the reason is safety, but that is false, because if that was the case, they will hire some of the strongest kids in those schools to protect their children. The real reason is quality of education, because at the end of the day, that determines the roles that the kids will play in the world once they grow into adults. And these parents don't want their kids to struggle and have nearly nothing. Another wave that's starting to spread now, thanks to the evolution of remote jobs, is homeschooling, which is not that great, but it is much better than the tyrannical system. You see, there's no way that the study from home programs are better than the private schools, because the private schools have all these people who have real world experience teaching the children and prepare them to solve real life problems. Those programs have to be expensive because those teachers are well paid and someone has to cover their salaries. Families know that it has to happen, but based on the preparation their kids receive, they know it is well worth it. Parents who homeschool their children miss on a great knowledge, but the advantage that they do have is that they can filter out all the indoctrination and woke ideology. Those kids may not get prestigious high-level knowledge and the connections that the kids in private school make with some of the employers and guest speakers who show up to some of their classes and events, but they do get to grow up healthy. They know that their imaginary genders are not the real genders that exist, and they won't try to cannibalize their parents like some of the kids in public school will. They will not be hypnotized into becoming the social justice warriors of tomorrow who will do anything for tyrant daddy and all the policy minions. Some charter schools are pretty good, but they are slowly being demoralized too. There is a book that I wish hadn't been written. It's called The Charter Schools and Their Enemies, written by an old foe of ours. His name is Thomas Sowell. We don't really like this guy, but he's also good for the economy. You may want to read his book. It will help you further understand the war that is going on against charter schools and why even the teacher unions want them shut down. Talking about books, there's another one I recommend you read. It's called Dumbing Us Down by a guy who actually did so much for us in the tyrannical public education system for so many years. His name is John Taylor Gatto. I'm not sure what went wrong with that guy. Maybe he took some of the hateful LSD that we have condemned so heavily, but he had an awakening and realized that we and our educational system were not the good guys. He wrote this crazy book, and we have lost some of the parents we had participating in our system. If you have a chance, listen to his book in Audible or something, and watch some of his videos on YouTube. He's a bright man, and he's good for our economy. I've covered before in other class why it's important to have some people telling the truth. When truth and lies float around, people get overwhelmed, they try to find the truth, but the scammers take the little hopes they have left, and that brings them back into compliance. It is no different than having pets that roll astray and then come back realizing that the devil they know is better than the devil they don't know. Little do they know that in order for a hell to exist, there must also be a heaven. But most of the time, heaven is well hidden or farther than they have ventured, if they only had a little more patience or have more solid due diligence. These writers are as intelligent and sound as John R. Lott, who debunked many of the propositions to disarm the population in order to control them. It has been so long since the first edition of his book, and through his studies in law and economics, none of the Marxists who have been wanting to get dominion today, right now, through socialism, have been able to counter his position. It is just like the other writer, Michael Wheeler, who wrote the book Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics. Through his book, he exposed how we run our agenda through the media by using statistics and made up skewed studies. Our educational system, and now even some confused people on YouTube, continue to propagate that if there are numbers or some sort of study done, that the data becomes infallible and accurate, which is not true, because we can manipulate anything. We have refined that now through data science, thanks to our best script writers who have backgrounds in statistics and economics. We can present lies as truth, and in a much less obvious manner. I know it's a bit disappointing sometimes to see that everything we touch becomes corrupt. It's like the Midas touch, but it only turns it into gold for us. To a point, it's a bit crazy because sometimes people get a better or similar education on YouTube to what they would be getting on a standard school. Through YouTube, people are learning how to do mechanical work on electronic projects, and even learning how to do some construction work and remodeling. They don't have to resort to expensive classes in colleges. For other opportunities, there's Udemy, which is a bit of a gamble because some of the courses are great, but others are not so great at all. For the people in technology, there is A Cloud Guru, which is very good for theory and some labs. For efficient labs, there is WizLab and Learn SQL. The power of education is as efficient as it was during the times of the Greeks and the Romans, except that now we have created a grift where the standard to it is to overpromise and underdeliver. You must note that people are quickly figuring it out, and that they are starting to speak up through channels like YouTube and blogs like Reddit. I even knew a guy who was told that accounting needed so many credits in order to sit for the CPA, and in 4 months, he accumulated 24 credits lower division and 24 upper division. That is 48 credits that he managed to do for about $3,000. That is insane, considering that community colleges charge at least $160 per credit hour, which when multiplied, that is $3,840, and the lowest upper division colleges charge $260, that when multiplied by 24, that is $6,240, which bring the grand total to $10,080. Not to mention that it would have taken almost a year to get all those credit hours. That means that he saved $7,080 plus 8 months of work. So how did he do it? This is something that we will cover in another segment or a special program. We haven't decided yet. As you can see, the system is riddled with lies and difficulties in order to discourage you. It is no wonder there is an alarming shortage on people wanting to sit for the CPA. They have to have 150 semester credit hours or 225 quarter hours and 1 year of accountancy experience under a current licensed CPA as their direct supervisor. In some instances, most people with a bachelor's degree don't even have credits that equal to 150 credits. So they must give another round of debt for a master's program, which ends up in an average of $60,000 to $90,000 of debt and miserable pay of only $56,000. Yes, licensed CPAs can earn a bit over $100,000, but considering that they won't have that opportunity until about 6 years of study and the amount of debt that they must buy into, it is no surprise that they're opting to work in technology, where even an associate's degree and a certification or coupled with an internship from a community college can land them with a great career where their future education can be paid for by their employers. Places like United Technologies are known to do that for their employees. For what I know, the smart ones usually major in computer electronics because they end up landing jobs that are about $58,000 a year and later can move into cybersecurity for much higher salaries.